October 1536, Skipton Castle. Henry Clifford, the first Earl of Cumberland, stands on the battlements watching 40,000 rebels camp in the Yorkshire Dales below. The Pilgrimage of Grace has swept across northern England like a plague. Banners bearing the 5 wounds of Christ flutter over an army that wants Henry VIII's Protestant advisors dead and the old faith restored. Clifford's pantry is running low. His own tenants argue in the courtyards. Some want to join the rebels, others say stick with the king. The Earl's steward reports that 3 more villages have declared for the pilgrims. A messenger from the rebel captain, Robert Aske, demands Clifford open his gates or face siege. Clifford doesn't open them, he talks instead, promises to carry petitions to London, swears he shares their concerns about church policy, anything to buy time while Henry VIII musters his forces in the south. This choice will define the Cliffords for generations. 300 years they've held these northern strongholds, transforming from Norman raiders into border wardens, from medieval muscle into Tudor courtiers. Their story runs from Bannockburn's slaughter to Elizabeth's court, from a lord who supposedly lived as a shepherd to a woman who rebuilt castles with lawsuit money and left us the most detailed diary in English literature. Welcome to the rise and resurrection of England's most stubborn northern dynasty. Hello, friend. Welcome back to the Renaissance English History Podcast, a part of the Agora Podcast Network and the original Tudor History Podcast telling stories of Tudor England since 2009. I am your host, Heather, and as always, I am delighted that you are here with me today talking about the Clifford family. Let's get into it. The Cliffords weren't Cliffords when they arrived with William the Conqueror. They picked up the name from Clifford Castle on the Welsh border, where they spent 2 centuries learning how to kill Welshmen for Norman kings. Robert de Clifford changed everything. Edward I made him first Baron Clifford in 1299 and handed him a collection of northern castles that controlled the roads to Scotland. Skipton became Robert's headquarters. Brougham, Appleby, and Brough formed a defensive chain across Westmoreland. The king wanted these passes held, and Robert held them. He also died for them. Bannockburn, June 24, 1314, Robert charged Bruce's spearmen alongside 300 English knights. The Scots cut them to pieces in the morning mud. Edward II fled south, and Robert de Clifford bled out in a Scottish field, his body so hacked up they barely got enough pieces home to bury. His son Roger inherited the barony and promptly screwed it up. After rebelling against Edward II in 1322, he got himself captured at Brough and hanged as a traitor. The family lost everything. But they got it back. That's what made the Cliffords different from other northern families. They didn't just hold land, they made themselves useful. Border captains, royal agents, the men London called when Scotland needed watching or rebels needed crushing. They learned that service to the crown, however dangerous, paid better than rebellion. So Henry Clifford, the 10th Baron, was 9 when his father died at Towton in 1461. The Yorkists had won. King Edward IV's friends controlled the north. Henry's mother smuggled him into the Lake District before his father's enemies could find him. For 24 years, Henry disappeared. The story goes that he lived as a shepherd, learning to read weather instead of books, growing strong on mountain air and honest labor. And when Henry VII beat Richard III at Bosworth in 1485, this rustic lord emerged from the fells to claim his inheritance. Now, most historians doubt the shepherd story. Henry probably got some education and stayed in touch with Lancastrian networks. But the legend stuck because it served everyone's purposes. Henry VII could present the Restoration as innocent rather than calculated revenge. Henry Clifford got a romantic origin story that set his family apart. The reality, though, was impressive enough. Henry proved to be a capable soldier, administrator, and scholar. He corresponded with European humanists. He rebuilt the Clifford network that his father's death had shattered. He served Henry VII faithfully on the Scottish border, leading raids and organizing defenses. Most importantly, he gave his descendants a story. They weren't just northern barons, they were survivors who had touched the real England of field and mountain and then returned to serve with earned wisdom. The shepherd lord myth became the family's calling card for the next 2 centuries. Henry Clifford's loyalty to Henry VII paid dividends under Henry VIII. The king elevated him to the Earl of Cumberland in 1525, recognizing both his border service and his value as a northern power broker. The new earl got the wardenship of the West March, sheriffdoms across Yorkshire and Westmoreland, and the thankless job of keeping the North loyal to a king who lived 400 miles to the south. Border work meant constant headaches. Scottish raiders crossed the frontier monthly. English families feuded with each other, and everyone feuded with the Scots. Clifford organized musters, repaired castles, and wrote endless reports to London explaining why he needed more money, more men, and more authority to keep the peace. The Pilgrimage of Grace nearly broke him. October of 1536, with 40,000 rebels demanding Henry VIII to restore Catholic worship and remove his Protestant advisors, Clifford found himself alone at Skipton, surrounded by neighbors who'd known him since childhood and now wanted him to join their holy war. His response was masterful politics. Clifford opened negotiations with the rebel leaders. He listened to their grievances. He promised to forward their petition to the king. He expressed sympathy for their concerns about religious policy, but he never opened Skipton's gates. For 2 months, he played for time. The rebels controlled most of Yorkshire, but they couldn't take his castle. When the Duke of Norfolk arrived with royal forces, the rebellion collapsed, and Clifford's loyalty was rewarded with additional grants and offices. His neighbors got pardons or hangings, depending on how deep they'd gone into treason. The marriages that Clifford arranged for his children locked in these gains. His son married into the Percys. His daughter wed a Talbot. These alliances created a network of mutual support that stretched from the Scottish border to the royal court. Henry Clifford, the second Earl of Cumberland, transformed his family's status with one brilliant marriage. His bride was Lady Eleanor Brandon, the daughter of Charles Brandon, Duke of Suffolk, and Mary Tudor, Henry VIII's younger sister. This match brought Tudor blood into the Clifford line and put them in the royal succession conversation. I actually did a video on Eleanor Clifford Brandon a couple of weeks ago. I can link to that in the show notes. Anyway, Eleanor died young in 1547, but not before giving birth to Margaret Clifford. As Henry VIII's great niece, Margaret held a theoretical claim to the English throne. Elizabeth I never married and had no children, so Margaret's bloodline made her both valuable and dangerous. Margaret got the education her status demanded. She spoke French, Italian, and Latin. She corresponded with John Dee, the mathematician and court astrologer. She moved comfortably between her family's northern castles and Elizabeth's palaces, equally at home discussing border defenses and continental philosophy. Her marriage to Henry Stanley, the Earl of Derby, created one of England's most powerful regional alliances. The Stanleys, we did an episode on them several weeks ago, they controlled Lancashire and the Isle of Man. Combined with the Clifford holdings in Yorkshire and Westmoreland, this gave the family strategic depth across the entire Northwest. Their son, Ferdinando Stanley, became a serious player in late Elizabethan politics. Some actually considered him a better claimant than James VI of Scotland. Ferdinando died mysteriously in 1594, possibly poisoned. Margaret survived these dangerous decades through careful politics and useful marriages. She kept her head while other claimants lost theirs. The Northern Rising of 1569 tested every northern family's loyalty to Elizabeth I. The Earls of Westmoreland and Northumberland raised 6,000 men, ostensibly to free Mary Queen of Scots and restore Catholic worship. Really, they wanted to overthrow Elizabeth and put Mary on the English throne. Now, Henry Clifford, the second Earl of Cumberland, faced the hardest choice his family had confronted since the Pilgrimage of Grace. Most of his neighbors joined the rebels. His own tenants expected him to lead them against Elizabeth's Protestant government. Catholic priests preached that loyalty to the Queen meant damnation. And yet Clifford stayed loyal. He raised his own forces and marched them to York, where they joined the royal army. When the rebellion collapsed and its leaders fled to Scotland, Clifford was among the few northern earls to emerge with his position strengthened rather than compromised. The aftermath brought permanent changes. Elizabeth's government imposed bonds for good behavior on suspect families. Regular reports to the Privy Council became mandatory. Networks of informers reported on religious activities, political discussions, and family connections. The Cliffords learned to work within this surveillance state. They patronized Protestant preachers while quietly assisting displaced Catholics. They funded church repairs that removed superstitious imagery while preserving architectural integrity. George Clifford became a sea captain, commanding privateering expeditions against Spanish shipping. His naval service proved his Protestant credentials while filling the family coffers with prize money. But the religious divide never fully healed. Northern England remained largely Catholic in sympathy. The Cliffords, like their neighbors, lived with the constant tension between personal conviction and political survival. Anne Clifford was born at Skipton in 1590, expecting to inherit her father's vast northern estates. George Clifford, the third Earl, had no sons. By rights, everything should pass to his only daughter. Except it didn't. George's will followed legal precedent, passing the estates to his younger brother Francis under male entail. Anne, at just 10 years old, became one of England's wealthiest heiresses and one of its most dispossessed. Her response defined the rest of her life. Anne initiated legal proceedings that would last 40 years, challenging not just Francis's inheritance, but the entire system that excluded women from landed wealth. She hired the best lawyers money could buy. She lobbied judges, politicians, and anyone else who might influence her case. The legal battle was only part of Anne's significance. She kept meticulous diaries that provide an unparalleled window into 17th century aristocratic life. Her great books of record documented family history, property disputes, and personal relationships with unprecedented detail. These texts represent the most important collection of female-authored material from early modern England. She says things like, "Mr. Edward, Earl of Dorset, was the most bitter and earnest enemy to me that I ever had, but God Almighty delivered me most miraculously from all of his crafty devices. The 6th of November was my cause in chancery between me and my tenants in Westmoreland dismissed out of that court, and I was left to my remedy at common law, to which business God send some good conclusion, for it hath been both chargeable and troublesome unto me. And in August this year, while I lay in Skipton Castle in Craven, did Judge Polston and Sergeant Parker come to Appleby Castle in their northern circuit, where they now lay for 4 or 5 nights." She also talks about personal things. "And the 29th of this month, I, with my grandchild and my family, came from Skipton, lying one night by the way at Kirby Lonsdale, so that the next day we came to Appleby Castle, where this grandchild and I kept our Christmas this year." So many details, super interesting to read. And you can actually look at the diary and its completion at the Internet Archive. It's public domain, of course, because it's like 4 centuries old. Or you can also buy an annotated version that has an introduction, etc. on Amazon. I will put links to that as well in the show notes. Anne's first marriage to Richard Sackville, the Earl of Dorset, connected her to one of England's premier court families. Her second, to Philip Herbert, the Earl of Pembroke, linked her to another. Both husbands supported her inheritance claim, understanding that her northern estates would dramatically increase their own wealth and influence. Funny that. In 1643, Francis's male line died out, and Anne, who was now 53, finally inherited the states her father had left to his brother. The triumph unleashed an extraordinary building campaign that reshaped the northern landscape. This was the most ambitious private building campaign in the 17th century in northern England. She had waited 40 years to reclaim her birthright, and now she would make sure that nobody forgot her triumph. Brougham Castle came first. She found it a ruin, its walls were cracked, its roofs fallen. She rebuilt the Great Hall, restored the private chambers, and added new lodgings for her household. A stone inscription records her achievement. This Brougham Castle was repaired by the Lady Anne Clifford after it had lain ruinous without roof or floors ever since about 1617. Appleby Castle followed. Anne turned the medieval keep into a comfortable residence while preserving its defensive character. She added gardens, repaired the Church of St. Lawrence, and built almshouses for 12 poor widows. Her tomb in the church displays effigies of her parents, herself, and her two husbands, proclaiming 4 generations of Clifford power. Brough and Skipton got similar treatment. Anne didn't create romantic ruins. She built working residences that could house her household, entertain guests, and impress visitors. Each castle became a center of local administration, with Anne's stewards collecting rents, settling disputes, and maintaining order. Her building inscriptions tell the story in her own words. At Pendragon Castle, this pillar was set up by Lady Anne Clifford in memory of her last parting in this place with her good and pious mother. At Brough, she wrote, "This Lady Anne Clifford, in her own time, repaired this castle and the church and made this highway." Now, Anne died in 1676 at Brougham Castle, surrounded by the stones that she had raised to proclaim her victory over law, custom, and male prejudice. Her funeral cortege stopped at every castle and church that she had restored, a final progress through the landscape that she had remade. So, hey, if you're still with me and you're enjoying this deep dive into the Clifford family, just a quick reminder that if you buy your TudorCon from Home ticket during the month of August, you will be upgraded to the Privy Council. What does that mean, Heather? Well, that means that you will get extra bonuses like a special pack of Zoom backgrounds so you can show everybody just how special you are. You'll also get priority access to the Q&A during the 3 days of speakers themselves. TudorCon is happening at Agecroft Hall if you were somehow under a rock and missed it. But of course, you can come from anywhere in the world without coming to Richmond with TudorCon from Home. So I hope you will check it out. You'll also save $15 off the tickets. The tickets are a steal anyway. They're just $49 for the entire weekend. You get recordings of everything, the live chat, the community, all of that. So go to englandcast.com/TudorCon from home. Again, englandcast.com/TudorCon from home. Enter the code EARLYBIRD when you sign up, and you will get the discount, and then you will be part of the Privy Council as well. So again, englandcast.com/TudorCon from home, and I will hope to see you there online on October the 3rd. All right, so what happened to the Cumberland line? Well, the title died out with Francis Clifford in 1643, but the family name and estates continued through Anne to new dynasties. Her sister Margaret had married John Tufton, the Earl of Thanet, creating another complex inheritance that would occupy lawyers for decades. Other Clifford branches survived independently. The Cliffords of Chudley and Devon maintained the name and some traditions, though without the northern strongholds that had defined the main line. Cadet branches scattered across England, carrying Clifford blood into obscurity. What survived tells us about memory as much as history. Skipton Castle remains largely intact, its great hall and towers still dominating the market town below. Appleby preserves Lady Anne Clifford's tomb and some of her archives. At Brougham, her inscription stones mark her triumph over time itself. The literary legacy proved equally persistent. Wordsworth wrote about the Cliffords, focusing on Anne's achievement and the shepherd's lord legend. Victorian writers used the family story to explore Northern identity and female agency, and tourist trails still follow Henry's supposed wanderings through the Lake District. Modern Skipton markets itself as the gateway to the Dales, but the real gateway remains Anne Clifford's castle, its stones proclaiming 5 centuries of Northern power. The Great Hall, where Henry Clifford decided not to join the Pilgrimage of Grace, now hosts wedding receptions and corporate events. History becomes heritage, but the stones always remember. Anne Clifford's own assessment survives in her diary. "It pleased God to give me strength and patience to recover my right by law and to build again what time and injury had ruined." Her achievement was simpler and more radical than she claimed. She proved that memory and determination and superior legal advice could overcome centuries of custom that denied women their inheritance. The North still remembers its difficult daughter who refused to disappear. I'm a big fan of Lady Anne Clifford and the Clifford family in general. So we will leave it there for this episode. As usual, if you would like to get in touch with me, you can always hang out at the Tudor Learning Circle, tudorlearningscircle.com. That is a social network just for Tudor history nerds to talk about all things related to Tudor history. I will be back, of course, with more YouTube drops of my YouTube videos. Thank you so much to those of you who wrote in saying that you appreciated them. I know a lot of you aren't on YouTube, so hopefully that's been fun. And I'll be back with another deep dive like this in a week. Have an amazing week. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Blow, northern wind, send who may be sweating. Blow, northern wind, blow, blow, blow. Ich hatte Bord in Bauerbricht, dat soll semlis on sich. Mensgevoel meiden of nicht, fern freit von in all this worldliche one, Bord of blood and of bone, never yet in us known, drops of